right, welcome to the only podcast containing 89% of your recommended daily serving of SketchUp, SketchUp Talk.
Almost there. Almost 100%.
The only way to get to 100% of your daily serving is to actually use SketchUp. So this is for people who can't get in front of a computer today. This will get you close. This will be a good supplement, but double your dose of real SketchUp tomorrow. I'm your host, Aaron Dietzen, and with me, as always, is Matt Robison.
That's me. Hello, Matt Robison. It is. Nice one.
I said it wrong last time, so I had to make sure to pronounce that correctly.
Yeah, your double dose of correct wording of my name. Pronunciation, not wording. Got the wording right last time. Got the pronunciation right this time.
This time, both wording and pronunciation.
Right.
So this season, we're dedicating each episode to diving deep into one of the industries that SketchUp's part of. And this time, we're going to talk about construction. Specifically, we're going to take a look at residential construction. Construction's kind of a broad topic, and we figured we could narrow it down a little bit and look at a specific piece. So when we talk about residential construction, this is how we'll define it for purposes of this podcast. We're talking about, well, non-commercial. So we're talking about things like houses and homes and smaller
houses and homes.
Wow. Houses or homes. We'll talk about both at the same time. But smaller structures, generally light frame would be another term that would be used. Staying away from things like, buildings that are real tall, built with concrete and steel. That's kind of, I think, where we're looking at. So,
okay.
Framed stuff.
No concrete houses or homes.
No. In fact, this will be the last time we'll say concrete this entire episode. Maybe.
No,
see? Didn't work.
It won't let me. The podcast won't let me, Aaron.
That's right. There's power. There's power in the podcast. So there are a couple spots when we talk about residential construction. There are a couple things we talk about with building homes and those kind of buildings. It's custom versus production. Not sure if your familiarity with residential construction. I'm sure
prefab.
That's a word. That is one of the words that gets used. Absolutely.
Sure. That's my extent of my res knowledge. Residential.
That works.
I don't know if you know that. But
that was new lingo for me. The res.
Right.
The res firming. Okay. So a lot of times when we talk about residential framing, we break it down into custom versus production. So a custom home builder would be somebody who's building a one-off home.
Gotcha.
So this is if you bought some land and you wanted to go get your own house made, you would get an architect and you would go to a custom home builder and he would build you the house that your architect designs for you.
My dream home.
That's right.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah. A lot of times when people do that, it is their dream home. It's one of those things that you don't do a whole lot unless you're, masochistic or something, and because there's definitely a hard part of that. It's a lot of work to build your own home. Mm-hmm. The other option would be production home buildings, and this is what a lot of like neighborhoods you see built, where not necessarily cookie cutter where it's the exact same house over and over again, but it's usually a set of plans that is slightly modified one house to the next, but there's a lot of repetition in what actually gets built.
Similar components and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah, the general house might look the same, but the facade on the front is changed to give a different elevation, or there's options inside, 2-car, 3-car garage, whatever, that kind of stuff. But that all falls under the umbrella of production home building. So when we look at where SketchUp falls in a big piece onto that custom piece where people go in and they're making this house from scratch, and they need the ability to be fluid with their designs and make stuff quick and easy. And that's where SketchUp really has a good home, pun intended, in residential construction or design. Production, absolutely people using it. One of the people, Dwayne Addy, who is a SketchUp user and advocate, uses it for production drawing, and he does all of his stuff for those production home building inside of SketchUp and layout. So it's absolutely there, but where we see a big piece of it is more in that custom, where there's that one-off build. So people like Nick Sonder and others we've talked to end up making custom homes using SketchUp. It's kind of funny because I don't know if we haven't dug deeply into markets on here before, but building was kind of a weird and volatile market. I was looking at numbers which
I was wondering what that number chart was. I was like, you have stuff highlighted on it? I was like, what is going on here?
We do. There's a piece of paper with a lot of numbers on it, and I try to stay away from numbers whenever possible. But this was kind of cool to look at because it's actually a list of building home starts of privately owned housing units. It was a record of basically how many housing starts, housing starts is a kind of a general way to judge the health of the building market at any given time. So in a year, how many houses
were started?
And it's funny because there is a difference between completion and starting, because there is actually a loss in there where a certain number of houses get started and don't finish, especially when bad things happen.
Right.
So these numbers go back to 1959.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So way back, and I can say that older than myself, so it's real old stuff. And it's interesting to watch the number of builds because it was looking like it was about, when they started keeping track of this, it was about 1.5 million home starts in the year. And that built up. There's a big peak in the early 70s and then later in the late 70s where there were over 2 million home starts. And then it kind of hung between, 1.5, 1.3, 1.7. And then we hit this big bump again where we're up over 2 million in 2005.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah.
Sounds like it can only go up from here.
You'd think. And then the unthinkable happened. That was, of course, when 2008 happened. And there was a big crash in building and home starts, and big thing about lending and mortgages and all that sort of thing. So it actually dropped significantly to about 500,000 home starts. So
oh, wow.
It was a bad thing.
That's like what is that like? I'm thinking of how many homes are involved in this crash. Like it's a 500,000 home pileup. It's a large crash.
It was a long freeway, and a lot of, but it was
big backups.
When this happened, it was actually really bad because a lot of funding went out, banks folded, but bad things happened. So there's actually entire neighborhoods that were halfway through being built that just people walked away from because there's no money to pay people to finish building.
A lot of starts, no ends.
Exactly.
That's a problem.
And it had a significant impact on the entire industry because since there was no money there, people stopped doing that. And a lot of people who had experience with building, framing, that kind of thing, went and found other jobs because, you don't stick around. You can't feed your family just thinking, well, I'm good at this thing.
I'm just going to wait it out.
Yeah, exactly. Head down.
Yeah.
So that's actually had a lasting impact. We're back up to the point where we're back into, 1 million plus, pushing. I can't remember what the housing starts were for 2016, but it was well over 1 million, 1.2 million, something like that. So we're back healthier again, but there's still this lasting impact of a lack of trained labor or people who know how to build stuff. It's called that.
Yeah. Okay.
Which has been very interesting for people like us who have software that can be used to help with construction. Because one of the things that this leads to is the need for smarter design or more design done up front, because we don't necessarily have the same people who we had 20 years ago who you can just hand a plan to and go build this, and everything's good. So there's become more of a requirement for software like SketchUp, where we can actually put information into the design, make the design smarter, and design things up front in the software rather than just sending some blueprints. And actually, they don't call them blueprints anymore. That's an old thing. Plans and a pile of lumber out to the field and saying, just go build this.
So I've heard people say, you build it before you build it. You build it twice. You build it in the software once, and then you can kind of work out stuff, right? So you're not actually sending a bunch of people in wood and putting it in the wrong configuration. You're just doing that with geometry, and then you can move that around. It's more cost effective. And
exactly, and that's a huge piece of it because, like I said, there's a lack of and I'm not saying that everybody out there who's building a house doesn't know what they're doing. And that's not. There's plenty of great people doing very good work, but the idea of bringing the design as much as possible up front is a huge time saver. So it's, for one thing, you can work out problems. So in the software, I can go through and look at what kind of support I need in a floor system or something like that. If I'm going to put in a big beam, is it going to cause problems with HVAC? I can check all that sort of things in the model beforehand, rather than having all that material go out to the field and then finding out something doesn't work, it doesn't fit together, I need a repair. Moving that design up front prevents that from happening.
Right.
And it also, by doing that design ahead of time, we end up with lower costs, because if the design is correct, then there's less wasted material. There's that sort of thing. So there's
rework. I've heard of rework. Bad
good,
word.
Not good. And waste is also bad. So
recycle.
That's
what you should do instead.
That's true. But it is hard to build a house with a bunch of 2-foot pieces of wood, or the scrap that gets thrown out.
A bunch of sawdust.
Yeah, exactly. Just glue that back together.
Very strong glue.
That's right. Yeah, big bottles delivered to the job site. just squirt this in the trash heap, and we'll make the third floor out of that.
Third floor. Wow, you're gonna fancy
big house. Big house. Yeah. So it's kind of cool because, while obviously the recession was a bad thing, it has pushed forward some thinking about how design should be done and the advantages of, like you said, building before you build. It's been kind of nice. Again, one of the I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but the construction industry in specific is not a real quick to change. They don't adopt change quickly. So it's kind of cool to see more and more technology getting involved in construction now. So later we'll be talking to John Brock, and he's actually a big advocate for bringing as much technology as possible into the design and into the field. So that'll be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. These guys like working with their hands. They don't like mice, keyboards.
That's right.
I'm more in the nail gun types, right?
That's right.
I saw a screw gun the other day online. I've never seen one of those before, but they exist. Have you seen one of those?
You know, I've done, the company I worked for before, we did design software, and it was framing. We started out in wood, and then as light gauge steel became more prevalent in residential building, we actually started doing stuff with that. Mm-hmm. And there is some devices out there which are super cool. The one that it will stick in my mind forever, it was a screw gun, and it had a long neck on it, so you could stand upright, and there's a spool like something you see on a Tommy gun, around.
Spool, a drum mag.
There we go. A drum full of screws all connected together, and you could, from standing up, just walk along and screw down the sheathing without having to bend over or anything. It was amazing. It was like a machine-fed screw aerator. I don't know.
Yeah, but I like the standing aspect. The one I saw didn't have like a extendo mouth on it or whatever it's called, but
yeah, well, it's pretty cool seeing that's practical technology, or that's not practical. What's the word? Actual, physical,
mechanical
technology.
Like
there we go.
Sort of.
That was exactly the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
So one of the things we try to talk about here is this industry in the history of SketchUp. For this specific thing, I don't really have a great story that says, in 2015 in the SketchUp office, such and such happened. But what I can say is I'm not a construction guy myself. I have never professionally built buildings, but a few years ago, I did frame my own basement, finished the whole thing. So I went from a big cement room to a couple of bedrooms, bathroom, and a little living room. And I did the whole thing in SketchUp, which was pretty cool.
Nice.
So it was amazing to me. So I as I tend to do, when I'm going to go do something I don't know how to do, I try to talk to people. And at the time I was working with a lot of guys who were general contractors, that sort of thing. And they were able to answer a lot of questions, which was gold. But I also looked online at, how do you estimate for these things? And there's, take your initial estimate, multiply by 2, and then add it to itself again. Or, everybody talks about the inflation
Sounds like
of price.
Good equation.
Yeah, it's rough because it goes up in price, and there's an extra piece you need, and then you find out you need a tool, and then
gotta drive back to Home Depot again. I've heard this story. Tale as old as time.
Time and time again.
Time after time.
So it was pretty cool that I was actually able to do most of this work almost exactly how I had planned because of the model that I made. I did, like I said, I was working at that company where we did design software. It's called Keymark Enterprises. We made design architectural. It was very good stuff, and that absolutely used that software too. But the actual visualization of everything was done in SketchUp. And there's a couple reasons this was a big deal. One was to help me with things that I didn't know what I was doing. So this was plumbing, electrical, stuff like
Mechanical.
that. That covered all the
MEP.
all the O's, were things I didn't know about.
Right.
But being able to go through and model it first in SketchUp was huge because I could actually see, where pipes were going to have to go, how much I needed. So that took a huge burden off, and I had very little extra anything. I mean, when I was done, my leftover construction garbage went in my regular garbage can because I was actually able, for the most part, to accurately count how much of everything I needed.
You didn't buy twice as much and had half of the price increase or whatever?
I turned my back on the advice, the sage advice that I received, and ended up just getting what I found I needed from the model. The other thing, and this is not to be discounted, I look directly in the camera as I say this, this is not to be discounted. I was able to walk my wife through the entire project, the entire basement, and get sign off. There was never a point where she's like, I don't understand what this is, where this is, why is this thing like this? I was able to actually go, hey, let's go walk through the basement.
You got to get approval from the boss.
Right, exactly. That's a callback you just don't want. So everything was able to get signed off and approved visually, which was just huge. And that's something I couldn't have done without SketchUp.
Right.
And that was just, I just remember that was like, we never went back. Like there was never a point where I was always expecting, this room seems bigger than it should be. This, like that. And I just never had that. It was very, very nice. So,
yeah, that does sound great.
So I can only imagine that was just me doing a small project by myself in the basement. Felt a lot bigger than the small project, but compare that to building an entire house or a neighborhood and having dozens, if not hundreds of customers coming to look at it. It's amazing the big difference between, having a set of 2D plans, which as design professionals, we can all look at a set of 2D plans and go, oh yeah, I understand how this is going to come together. But a lot of customers can't. So that visualization is huge for people seeing that. But then also being able to account for what it's going to take to build that is just a big deal.
Nice. And how did it turn out? It all lined up and everything?
Everything. No serious problems that I can remember.
Nice.
Yeah, I had a little fear about doing some things, but that was all about me. That was not the design.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I was a skateboarder, and I don't know how much you know about skateboarding, but sometimes you like to grind on, like whether it's a rail or a little like box or something. So I like made my own box to have in my in my driveway there, or I guess my parents' driveway. To do, your grinds on and stuff like that.
Sure.
And we did it without plans or anything,
As teenagers do.
Yeah. And I tried to figure it out, but when I finished, it was all like not lopsided, but like kind of angled in a certain like weird twisted, and we had to like put like these shims underneath it, and like there was like 2 inches off that it was, it's hard to get stuff to line up. But I guess if you got like actual plans and I don't know if you're good at building stuff. I'm just very poor.
I don't
want
to discount the ability to actually build things. That's important too. That's interesting. I actually helped build and manage a skate park for a couple of years.
Oh.
And we did all the layout for everything in SketchUp as well. So
cool.
Not traditional framing, not building a house, but yeah, it was useful there too, because I was able to talk with our pro, the guy who was actually running it, and we measured out the room, and we were able to actually go build the obstacles and put them where they were to go, and you look at the flow of the park. It was really cool. Yeah.
Nice.
So nowadays in SketchUp,
Right.
So by the time this goes live, we'll have returned from the International Building Show, which was just to pause real quick. So the International Building Show, as it is now known,
And it's only known as that. It's not known as anything else.
is run by a group called the National Association of Home Builders, the NAHB.
Gotcha.
It used to be that this show was called the NAHB. So you go to the NAHB show.
Yeah, makes sense.
They changed the name a couple of years ago to the International Builder Show.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, international, you got the builders, it's a show. It makes sense to me.
There doesn't seem right off the cuff when you say it that way to be a bad side, but the downside comes across when I tell people that I'll be out of the office next week because I got IBS. So it's still a great show. Love going to it. But yeah, so when you hear this, I'll have recently recovered from IBS. And I bring this up because, yes, in addition to being the building show, where we talk to builders about using SketchUp, we're doing something a little different this year in that we're actually framing a portion of our booth in wood, and people will be able to do VR tours using the SketchUp viewer and actually look at things like the utilities inside the framed walls using the VR headset.
Cool. That's the racket you were making in the back the other day.
I did. We have a little maker space, warehouse kind of space behind our design group. And I went back there and cut, screwed, every loud noise I could possibly make. I made
grunting
for an entire day. Oh, there was some grunting.
Tim Allen grunting whenever you do.
It was good. But so hopefully you were able to join us at IBS and take a look at this. And hopefully you got to see, I'll at this point, talking in the past, I will have presented that model and how everything was actually designed, accounted for, cut, screwed together based on SketchUp drawings. It was pretty cool. And of course, we can't talk about construction without mentioning the Constructible website for Trimble, which it's just a cool resource for anybody having to do anything with construction. So from top to bottom, architecture, MEP, engineering, check out constructible.trimble.com. We'll have a link to it wherever you found this podcast as well, but it is a great resource with all kinds of data and information and white papers and links and
videos. I got a video. There's at least one video.
It is just pages and pages of, I guess it's not pages, it's infinitely long.
It's a scrolling page.
Infinite scrolls. Yeah. Yes. Infinite scrolls of information that is well worth looking at if you're into BIM, construction, design, any of that kind of stuff. So absolutely check that out. It's a big piece of what we got going on here at Trimble when it comes to construction.
You got everything you need to build it. You got your, all your stuff you need, content enabled.
That's right. A lot of smart guy stuff on here that I don't.
Connected stuff, connection. You got Trimble Connect in there.
Yeah.
Keeping everything in order.
It's just a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And then some. All right. So with that, I think we're going to take a quick break, hear from one of our sponsors, and then we will be right back with John Brock.
Cool. Hello, listeners and viewers, of course, of SketchUp Talk. That's right. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Generate Report. Why sit and count component instances off your screen when you can use Generate Report? Generate Report allows you to quickly and easily get quantities, components names, and attributes from any SketchUp model. Best of all, your reports are completely customizable, so you can report on the information that you need. Generate report!
So we've come to the point where we're going to talk to our very special guest, something of an expert on construction. And I'm labeling him as that. He did not tell me to introduce him that way, but we do have John Brock from Estimator for SketchUp. How's it going, John?
Great. How are you?
So far, so good.
Excellent.
It's cold here, but other than that, I feel okay.
A lot better than last week.
Yeah. So, John, you have spent more than a little bit of time working in the construction industry. You want to fill us in on your background so we can verify that expert label that I just branded on you?
Yeah, I've been in it for about 32 years now, I guess. I graduated from Virginia Tech with an engineering degree, civil engineering degree, minor in construction management, and started right out in construction. Actually, I was going to work for a commercial contractor up in Northern Virginia, but my mother was ill at the time, and so I took a job with a residential builder, a large production builder, and sort of got hooked. Did about 7 years there, left as vice president of construction, and started my own custom design build company when I had a 1-year-old and one on the way. They're both Army lieutenants now and officers, so you can tell how long ago that was. So
that's ambitious. That's taken on a lot in a small amount of time.
Yeah, so that was over 25 plus years ago, and but never looked back. But it was always sort of it was a design build deal, so I was sort of hooked on the design part as well. I started out obviously hand drawing back in the day, as old as I am, at the drafting table, and then went to AutoCAD, and then became anything I could get my hands on 3D wise. Sort of became a junkie with that.
Sounds like you're a little ahead of the curve if you were pushing 3D back then.
Man, I remember the first time I could make a rafter go in 3D in CAD. I was just like a kid in the candy store. But no, then I started getting into, I was a big soft plan user for years. But I just couldn't get that. I was just on this quest for realism. I didn't want this cartoonish looking renderings, and really became obsessed with that. But basically, I like to design or build every house that I'm going to build before I build it. I mean, that's been my mantra for at least the last decade of showing my clients exactly what it's going to look like. So with that, I needed better and better technology, and I guess go ahead.
Let me ask you something there, John, just because. I came up in the technology for construction, for architecture field. And I got to say, I just want to throw this out there. It seems like this industry in particular is very slow to adopt new technology.
It's extremely slow. And even today, I've got guys that, that I'm doing now. I'm doing constructability reviews for builders where I'm taking their plans and building it before they are. And most of them are high-end custom homes around the country. So I'm seeing some really cool stuff. But everybody still has this mentality of, we'll fix that in the field.
Right.
Why? Well, let's fix it now. Let's work out these issues before your guy calling you in the field with a problem, or you have to tear something out and redo it. It is just amazing what I find now. And I've got tons of anecdotal stories and things that over my years of construction, a toilet over top of a truss, and you can't cut a truss. And so that's the first thing I do.
You absolutely can.
Until the building inspector comes along. So, I literally cut out the holes in the subfloor for every single toilet. It's one of the first things I do and go, well, that's over a truss. And I can fix that now, but rather than later. But yeah, the industry's slow to adapt technology. They're getting better.
Why do you think that is? Is it just how these guys in the field are trained? Is it just legacy? Is it?
I think a lot of it's how they're wired. I mean, I am one. I'm really get a good insight. I'm in a peer group of builders called a Builder 20 Club through NAHB, and there's 18 or 19 in our group from around the country, all mostly high-end custom home builders. And I've been the technology geek in the group, bringing them iPads and this, that, and the other. Trying to cloud storage. There's just a lot of resistance to it. A lot of guys are just used to, they came up in the field and they've got their tools, and, the younger guys, you got digital natives and digital immigrants, and the digital natives, they're used to it. They've grown up with all this. where,
Right.
the older guys did not. And the truly older guys that are kind of phasing out, they probably never will jump on this bandwagon.
Yeah.
But, the guys that get it, the ones that I'm working for now, the younger builders that are just, they crave the technology.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's good. It's good. It's good to see that it's finally moving that way. I know for the longest time, the idea of walking up to somebody who is framing it and saying, "Hey, there's a better way to frame," it was like speaking a language they didn't even understand. You just get a a weird look and go, "Wait, why would I use a computer to frame something I already know how to frame?"
Well, even my carpenter here, I'm in Southwest Virginia. We're not going to have a whole lot of carpenters that use computers a whole lot, and a lot of older school guys. And so, he had a laptop, didn't use it for much, but I would put my SketchUp up, that where there was SketchUp Make on there, and give him the file. And, he would actually study the model. And the next day he would already have it planned out what he was doing with the guys, what he was going to frame, and he could see it before he went out there. So he genuinely used it.
That's great.
So yeah, it was a great experience turning some heads with this stuff, and people get a kick out of it. What really pisses me off is when I can point things out in the model, but then they let it happen in the field anyways because they didn't pay attention to it, or there was no really good way of getting it out there. That's been my obsession, is getting it out into the field. I can model these things, but how do I get it out into the field? I've dreamed of these little job kiosks, screens, or certainly now with the mobile viewer, I'm giving it to the guys in the field and they can spin around the house with their iPhone, and it's just a lot better than it used to be, and it's still got a ways to go, but
that's good.
It's where it's going. I mean, everybody talks about BIM. Well, that's BS. I mean, there is no BIM. If there's no model, there's no BIM, right?
Right.
Everybody talks about BIM. Oh, it's, I get these plans from builders across the country, and not one of them have access to a model. I've gone through this past year, I've been a part of a accelerator program in town that I got a part of, and with my Constructability 3D business, and did a lot of customer discovery, talking with builders and architects and homeowners to try to find out, who is my target market with that service. You would think it'd be architect. And it was amazing how many architects, if they are using some sort of 3D modeling program, don't give out the models, or are largely hesitant to,
right.
For fear of misinterpretation. Several of them said, I'm like, how can you misinterpret something if you've modeled it the way you want it built? Mm-hmm. And honestly, I mean, they, in their defense, their job is to get drawings done and get on to the next set of drawings. I get that. But the builder's the guy out in the field sort of holding the bag, and there's a lot of things that don't get thought out completely, as you well know.
Right.
I'm not bashing designers. It's happened to me. It's happened to everybody. You just don't see things until, for me, I see it when I build these models. It's clear as day. And that's been the most exciting part of this new business venture is being able to identify these issues before they ever become an issue.
And that's the constructability review you were talking about?
Yeah, Constructability 3D is the consulting business that I started last year. And in fact, for the last full year, I've not had anything under construction. So, it's been a new world of not having to worry about rain and snow and subs and picky clients and all that kind of stuff. But say I miss it because it's in my blood.
You're getting soft, John.
But I get to build a house a week, man. I mean, really cool houses out in Colorado and Utah and stuff like that. So it's been really exciting. But yeah, that business, I'm really targeting. Like I said, when I do the customer discovery, I realized it really is it's the kind of guys that I'm in a group with. It's the 20 club guys, the guys that, travel twice a year to better their business and get together with other builders to learn how to become better builders. And those are the kind of guys that understand the value of what I do. A production builder or a spec builder or somebody that builds the same plan over and over again. Yeah, the first time maybe would be great for them to have a model of it. But they already know their costs. Once they built it once, they know they're set. The guys that do that and really well, they don't need this kind of service.
Well, and I think that what you just mentioned is the big difference between BIM. We just recently did a show on BIM and got into the whole thing. It was an hour long. I don't want to do it again, but I think one of the big things between what you're talking about, were residential, light frame, custom home, there's not really a spot for or a well-defined spot for what we call BIM, because there's not the appetite to invest in it, because if it's being built once or it's not defined how it's going to be built, and it seems like there's still a spot for technology software in there that's not that big BIM piece.
I agree, and a lot of it gets really complicated. Or there's a lot of online project management systems, and I've tried them all, and they're much more prevalent now. But they still, and none of them are visually based. I've been working behind the scenes on one myself. Won't get too much into, but it's, none of them. They're just databases. None of them are visually based. And so I've got some plans for that. Because I want to tie the whole process together. I want to tie the selections process. That's how I started Estimator, was out of a need for this type of thing. But I want to take it so much further. I want to tie all the whole selections process and the whole 9 yards, because that's where the chain of communication can break down. And, you get an unhappy client, or you let them down, or somebody lets you down, one of the subs or whatever, or a salesperson or a vendor, and it can snowball. And I tell you, the more you can stay on top of these people and stay on top of the subs and stay on top of the selections process, it goes faster. It's more, less changes. That's what we need. And that's what I've been just obviously passionate about for a long time. I just don't have any money. If I had money, I'd be dangerous, And so yeah, there's room to grow in the technology bit. And I read articles every day, obviously more in the commercial end. Mm-hmm. And a whole lot of stuff coming out of the UK, like the B1M and some of those that I follow. Right. That I think there's a lot to come. I wish I could be on the forefront of it, or hope I am.
It kind of sounds like you are. I mean, you mentioned Estimator just now. And that is, for anybody listening who doesn't know, that's an extension you've had for a little while now, a few years now.
2015, yeah. So what happened was I got into, I guess my first really detailed models were the first full house that I did was in 2012. So that would have been SketchUp 8, I think. And so that's when I really became kind of hooked on it and literally modeled everything. I spoke at Basecamp a couple of years ago about down to the details, modeling everything in SketchUp. I mean, I literally modeled down to the stud, the outlet, everything. And people look at me like I got two heads. My buddy Nick, Nick thinks, well, why are you putting all that stuff in there? Or Brightman, some of those guys give me a lot of grief about all the stuff I put in these models, but I want everything in there. And so what happened was I became friends with Dwayne Addy. You met Dwayne at the last Basecamp, Big Daddy.
Absolutely, yeah. He was one of our speakers.
Yeah, so he's my Canadian buddy. I won't tell you what my wife calls him
that's pretty good.
Because we talk all the time. But we're both pushed each other over the years for this stuff we've learned a lot from each other and pushed each other. But I got frustrated with the fact that, okay, I could model this beautiful house and I can see this beautiful roof. Well, how many squares of shingles are on it? How many studs, how much drywall? And so I started asking about, and what happened was Dwayne and I got the attention of somebody at SketchUp. This was probably back in 2013 or so, where Mark Harrison had actually asked us to come speak at AIA. And I've been doing it every year since then at AIA and IBS with you and everybody then, other guys. Yep. And so I became really hooked on cobbling together all kinds of stuff like cut list, or I remember there was the BIM Up 5D, and I tried some of these things, but they were just complicated or didn't do everything. And so I was cobbling together extensions to try to do my takeoffs. And then along that time, I was getting to know you and a lot of the other guys there. And I remember, I don't know if you recall some Google Hangouts that we had 4 or 5 years ago. And I'm telling you guys what I need. And I just assumed there would be an estimating program for SketchUp, with 30 some million people using it. And I realized, the mantra is 3D for everybody. They're not going to, pigeonhole one industry, keep it simple and keep it open and open source. Thank God that you guys did. And you guys encouraged me to hire a developer and get it done, which I did. It was a scary experience and a lot of money. But it was 2015. We came up with Estimator for SketchUp. So really there's nothing that I can't take off in there. And I had 5 things that had to happen. I told the developer, I said, all 5 of these things have to work or I'm not going to do it. I wanted it to be 100% inside of SketchUp. So, quotes, electrical, labor, portable toilets, insurance, things like that. I need to be able to include everything, including those quotes, including my margin, and here's the final number. Because other systems, you could get takeoff information and maybe you export it to Excel.
Right.
But when you make changes, and we all make changes, and especially in the custom world, did I change it in the model? Did I change it in the spreadsheet? Did I change, and it was just, no, I wanted, if I took that Mealy coffee maker out of the kitchen, I wanted it to go out of the budget, that kind of thing. And so we built that and it worked great. It still does. We're on our 2nd version now, which has a completely customizable items database. So you could have, you essentially assign something from your model to something in your items database. So where before you had to actually enter in costs and all this information one at a time for everything, and now you can do it in one database, which is a huge
That's
change. Great. Yeah. And so what really was cool along the way, I needed other tools and didn't have a great relationship with the first developer. It just had a lot of snags and unreliable stuff, and I won't go into any of that. But along the way, I got in with TIG, which probably everybody in SketchUp knows about TIG.
Absolutely.
His real name is by the way.
Man.
Met him over in the UK. Really nice guy. But I needed a tool to take off length of things. Like I use Profile Builder for a whole lot of stuff, and I'm able to, Estimator can read all the links that are generated with Profile Builder. But for things that weren't done with Profile Builder, maybe you wanted to get ridge vents or hip and ridge or valleys or, baseboard or anything that's in your model, and so I needed a way of collecting links. So I reached out to TIG and asked him if he could do something like that for me. Literally the next morning, he sends me a script, says like this. And it worked exactly like I wanted it to do. It's called Takeoff Length. I bought that from him. I said, well, can you do one for area? Yep. Did it for area. So we started doing other things. I did a slab tool that I actually wrote some of the code for because I was trying to learn. I thought, well, my brother's a high-level programmer. I'm an engineer. I can figure out how to do this. Well, no. My eyes glaze over when I start trying to write code.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, it's you would think it would be easy to do if you're so into this, but so I did create the slab tool. Now we've combined those with Estimator too. So the takeoff length, takeoff area, and the slab tool are now length, area, and volume as part of Estimator. And so that's been a really very useful plugin. I wish that I could have more time to get it out to the world. I don't do a lot of marketing with it, unfortunately, and haven't had a lot of time. But I see big things with it. And things are just born out of necessity for this workflow. So I needed a way of framing my houses, right? And so I was using Profile Builder, and Dale came up with assemblies, and it was cool. I could do studs in a wall. Well, you couldn't do openings. You couldn't do windows and doors and stuff like that. So it kind of broke down at that point. It was still faster than native tools. So I reached out to TIG about, there was that old House Builder plugin that's been out forever, but it's just geometry. There's no way of quantifying anything in there. Studs, plates, and things like that. And it was limited. Mm-hmm. So I reached out to TIG and we started working on one. And actually then I bought some code from Didier, just to give him some credit. I think it's Didier Burr. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, over in France. So actually got part of the Framer code from him, who started it. And we created Framer for SketchUp. And it's a parametric wall framing plugin. You can choose any wall section type, 2x4, 2x6, 2x8, whatever you want to be, metric. And then you're, however many plates, is it treated plate, regular plate, double, bottom plate, double top plate, that sort of thing. You pick those parameters, your start and end conditions and sheathing or drywall. And then you can add openings with whatever sizes of headers and multiple jacks and sills and things like that. So I spent a lot of time and a lot of money building that. But I use it every single day in this constructability business because, that's what's making it really affordable. Otherwise, if I had to model all that stuff by hand, nobody would be able to afford to pay what it would cost me to do it.
Absolutely. And that's something that a lot of people go, well, can't you just throw framing into a wall? And it sounds like, well, yeah, you couldn't say that for anything, right? It's simple. Yeah. But the fact is, And this is something that I've learned from training people how to use software to do things like framing is everybody in the world has their own way to do every one of those things.
Sure.
So you just talked about top plate, bottom plate, corners, how to frame a window. There's hundreds of little variables in there, and it's just about impossible to make everybody happy all the time.
Right.
But if you can automate a bulk of that, so get all the stuff in there, and then just lean on SketchUp to go, you want to go customize it? Well, it's SketchUp.
Exactly. Well, and that's how it works. And it all works with Estimator too. That's what we went through so much effort to do. So now when I model a wall, from point A to point B, I instantly have how many plates, studs, sheathing, Tyvek, nails, everything that I need for that, that goes into that. So that's why we spent so much time in making it work with Estimator, so that it's sort of a very seamless one-to-one kind of thing. And I've got bigger aspirations for that too, but I just, paying these programmers is about to kill me. But
well,
then
that's because this is not just, this isn't just something you threw out there. This is there's actually a suite of software associated with John Brock. You have Estimator, Framer, there is PDF Importer.
Well, what that was born out of, again, all this is part of the workflow. So I use, SketchUp's great for using it to model things to design with. So I sort of do things backwards, really, when I'm doing constructability, because the design is already done. I'm building a model of it. So I use it from that aspect. So I've got working drawings. So what I do is I take the working drawings I get the architectural drawings and the structural drawings and any civil or site drawings, and I put all those together, because you'd be amazed how many inconsistencies there are. Or architect says one thing, engineer says another thing that won't fit in what the architect did. And it's this thing that, as a builder, every builder out there goes, yep, I've dealt with that all these years.
Yep.
So the beauty of what I'm doing now is that I'm stopping and saying, okay, we're finding these problems now. I get the trusses from the truss vendors. They send me the actual 3D file, and I can import it into SketchUp. I clean it up, make it look like wood, and scale it, make sure it's proper. But I snap it right to the plate where it goes. And 9 times out of 10, I find problems. And I'm doing one right now. This morning for a guy out in Colorado, and there's 9 or 10 problems that he would have experienced out in the field. Some of them minor, but some of them really, really major that would have stopped the job and have to rebuild the trusses. So, but along the way with PDF Importer is I needed a way of getting the plans in, and you can import a CAD file, but you won't see any text. And it's a pain to have to keep on referring back to the drawings, whether they're printed out in front of you or on a big monitor in a PDF. So I started using Inkscape as a way of opening a PDF and then exporting as a DWG and bringing that into SketchUp. And that would work well, but the text wouldn't always come in. So I've been bugging every programmer I had since, TIG, to come up with an importer. And I actually lucked out with a guy who's actually here local. I went to the dev camp in Leeds about a year ago, and a little over a year ago.
Yeah,
really,
2018.
Yeah, and it was really for the quest of finding a programmer, all the way over there. And on my flight over there, I'm sitting next to this guy in Roanoke at the airport. I'm heading to Heathrow, but we're going to Philly, and turns out we're both a part of this Roanoke Blacksburg Technology Council that's here, and he's a programmer, but he doesn't do Ruby. So, I told him what I needed. He goes, "Oh, I know a guy that may do that." And when I got back, there was an email from this guy here that lives about a mile or two away, who is a brilliant, brilliant Ruby programmer.
So you had to fly halfway around the world to meet a guy a mile away.
Yes. It was hilarious. But of course, it was so cool because I got to meet some of the top guys, and Fredo and, and of course, TomTom. Gosh, he's, these amazing guys that have done so many amazing things that people use every day and don't realize how genius these guys are. I think they're from another planet. But it was cool to meet all those guys. But yeah, I came back and so he's helped me do this new version of Estimator, finish up Framer, and then PDF Importer. So with PDF Importer, it's one page at a time like you would do in Inkscape. So I'll go through and I'll say, okay, I'll look at the PDF, and the first floor is on page 2 of this PDF. And you say import PDF, pick the page, boom, comes in, and I scale it and go to town. Now it's vector only. It won't bring in images, but you wouldn't want that. It brings in all the line work. And what's best is you get all the text too.
That's
So,
great.
you can say, hey, that's a 2852 window there. You don't have to keep going back to things, which is,
Right.
It's awesome. But you got to be careful of 2D files, like, file sizes. So I get rid of all the clutter. I get rid of extra notes, title blocks, things like that.
That text, is that then imported as lines then?
Yeah. It's just, as you know, in SketchUp, there's no curves, there's no arcs, it's segments. And so that's why it's so bulky, because text is actually a bunch of segments. So you got to be cautious with that. But for the most part, it's sweet. I mean, I bring it in, that I build right on top of it. I literally snap snap a floor plan down to the subfloor or a slab, and then I use Framer and frame on top of it. And then the other one I came up with that I needed a way of marking up, drawing. So as I'm going through here, and I see, okay, this header's not going to fit in this opening. They're calling for a 2x12 and a 8-foot opening for 9-foot walls. It's not going to fit. So I was constantly either marking up in something like Bluebeam or writing down a note and then going back and sending an email with, here's a list of stuff. So I got Tig to do issue tracker for me. And it's as cool. It's very simple, but it's this red dot with a white exclamation point. You just drag it over the whatever it is. You get this little dialog box that pops up and says, pick a location, pick a category if you wanted to, and then you type out what the problem is. And then at any time you can run a branded PDF report, and it's got a picture of the image. It takes a snapshot of the current view and your description, and it does forward to a page on a PDF. And so you can email it to somebody or whatever. It's perfect for if you're with a client, they say, I want to move that door down 6 feet, or I want to change this to brick. Instead of having to write that down and remember to go back and do it, you just drag the tag over it and put out the information about it and come back and fix it later.
So it's all right there inside the SketchUp model.
Yeah, it's like a markup tool for SketchUp. And that's something that, I put that out a year ago. Of course, I haven't told anybody because I'm not really marketing this stuff very well. But that's something everybody should have, in my opinion. Not trying to tout it. It's just, it's so fast and easy. Well, yeah. So those are the 4 plugins, and I've actually got them on my Brightman. Mike Brightman's my accountability buddy, and we're constantly bouncing ideas back and forth. And so we're going to be doing individual sites for those plugins, but right now they're all available on Estimator. But
that's Estimator for SketchUp.com.
Yeah, Estimator FOR SketchUp.com, and all those are on there. But I'm eventually going to break them out, since they do different things. But I got customers that buy all 4. Or some people that just want the PDF importer or something like that. So I thought it'd be better to break them out. But.
Sure. Is there a deal if somebody comes in and gets everything from you? Do you buy them lunch or something?
Yeah, I do discounts every now and then for that sort of thing, but it's definitely with multiple seats. So it really just depends. I'm not really structured for a lot of that. I don't have employees, and it's just me. I'm answering enoemails from people around the world every day.
Right.
I get stuff every single day. But I respond to every single email that comes through. So obviously it takes a lot of time and to support this stuff. And it's not like you're making any real money with it. And, but it's great when you get an email from somebody that, man, you just made my day. You saved me a lot of time. That's cool. That's really what it's all about.
That's awesome. And,
yeah, man.
And, not just X-Framer and extension. I don't want to call you an extension developer, but you're the
idea guy,
initiator.
Yes, the guy who pays for the developer.
You make them happen. That's the important part.
Yes.
The other thing is you are also a published author. I like I said, I have right here in my hand a copy of SketchUp for Builders.
Yeah.
By John Brock. This just came out, a month ago, if that?
Yeah, it was right around Christmas, actually. I had a guy out west that sent me a picture of him in his book, and somebody over in the UK. So it was right around Christmas time. Then there was a snafu with the initial deliveries. And so it was like, all of a sudden it said 3 months for a delivery, but they got that all fixed. And I think sometime January, February it became solid. That's why I was going to start kind of doing a social media thing about it. But yeah, obviously I learned a lot from books. It's funny that I bought Mike Brightman's book, I bought Daniel Tall's book, and now I'm really good friends with both of those guys. And it's been a really awesome community. But Daniel's the landscape guy, and Michael's the conduct guy, and so I thought, well, why not something for builders?
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of people even say, well, you're giving away all your secrets or whatever. Why would you're building your own competition or whatever? And I'm like, I just don't see it that way. There's so much that, I'm in it every day. I'm in SketchUp every day, 12 hours, 15 hours, whatever it is. Weekends, it doesn't matter. So I'm in it all the time. So obviously I've learned a lot of what to do and what not to do. What is so amazing is that there's 10 different ways of doing things, you well know. And even like the first time that I went to base camp in Steamboat, 3 years ago, whatever that was. And so I went to boot camp ahead of time. And I learned so much in boot camp that I had to go back and change my presentation for base camp a couple of days later, and even this last time I was doing, Dizon was my proctor, I guess, at one of them. And TomTom was in the room, and I'm sitting there touting one of TomTom's plugins. And then I said something, and Dizon was like, well, don't you know you can just do this, and this? It's like, no, I didn't. You learn something new every day, because there's really no Bible for this. There's no,
Absolutely.
There's 10 different ways of doing things. And so I think what I try to do is point out what to do and what not to do. I guess the most important thing is no sticky geometry. It kills me when I see some of these models and I try to do something with it and it's just all sticky geometry.
And it drives group.
Yeah. It just drives, or it's not even group. So that's where I preach it throughout. Everything you create, stop, triple click on it, and group it,
Right.
Put it on a layer, because I use layers for everything too. So, but everybody's got their different ways, man. And that's kind of the cool thing about this is, Nick's got his way, I've got my way, and Dwayne's got his way. Everybody's got their thing. And I think Nick Saunders said it best, it's SketchUp at first. It's not like AutoCAD and you wish it was. And then after that, you're like, thank God it's not.
It's something that we hear every once in a while is, could you add such and such tool or such functionality so it would be just like whatever other software?
Sure.
And you got to sit back and go, well, but then it would be that other software.
Exactly. And there's
if
really,
like that we're set apart, then let's stay set apart.
Yeah, there's nothing you can't do in SketchUp. There's nothing I can't model. There's no portion of any complicated house, and the cool thing is you can just see everything. Just this morning I had this really this big fireplace that these guys want to use in a house that I'm designing down in Florida, and so I literally took the brand of it. It's this masonry type block you build yourself kind of thing, but did it all, worked out all the flue pipes and everything with what we have given. I've got to elbow it here to get around the second floor, to get up into a chase and get all the framing, and that's something you usually figure out in the field. Well, hell, after your trusses are in, it's too late.
Yeah.
And what is so cool is that I can model it exactly the way it's going to be built. And then I can make modifications to the framing and make notes and then lay out. What a great tool to do all your presentations in. And, and Nick started that whole movement, in my opinion, with just showing people what you could do with the most amazing drawings. And it's funny because Nick's videos, when they first came out, Dwayne and I would be calling each other like, hey, have you seen Nick's latest video?
Well, like you said too, it's one of the cool things, and this is one of the things that really drew me to SketchUp is the community. It's not like other software communities. You mentioned Mike Brightman, Daniel Tall, you talk about Nick Sonder, Dwayne Addy, and I should throw Matt Donnelly on there because he co-authored the book with Nick. And it's this awesome group of people, and those are just the guys with published books. There are more people than just that out there sharing information. But one of the things I really like about the SketchUp community is that there is that. Like, there's not this guarded. I've been part of other software communities where people just guard everything they've created as theirs. Everything's proprietary. I do it, but I'm not going to tell you how. I can't give you an example because then you'll steal it from me.
Yep.
And there's something about that piece of SketchUp where people are actually looking and going out of their way to share that knowledge.
Oh, you'll see that on the forums every day, the people that are active and that are taking their time to be helpful. It's funny. Like in the SketchUp for Builders, in the book, I had mentioned several years ago, I bought the domain SketchUpForBuilders.com. It's SketchUp the number 4 builders.com, because SketchUp FOR Builders goes to like Fine Home Building Magazine or something. But anyways, I bought that domain 3 years ago thinking I'm going to make a resource site for builders. Like I got time to do yet a 10th thing and a 5th business and all that. But anyways, I put that in the book as a resource thing that when I wrote the start of the book 2 years ago, I guess, year and a half ago, whatever. It consumed most of my year last year. And but I'd written in there as many of the resources like Sketchucation and the SketchUp forum and things like that. And I mentioned SketchUpForBuilders.com. And my editor, she was vetting everything and emailed me. She's like, "What is SketchUpForBuilders.com? It's not going anywhere." I said, "Well, I haven't gotten around to building that. I guess we should take it out." And she goes, "Well, do you think you could get it done?" And this was 3 months before it was coming out. I thought, yeah, I can get it done. And of course, then the book's coming out. Oh crap, I got to get that done. So I didn't have the money to even pay my web guy to do it. So I learned how to do WordPress enough to create, it's a pretty cool looking website if you ask me. But so I did SketchUpForBuilders.com before the book came out. And as I was talking with, Dwayne and some of the other guys, I thought, well, let's put an Ask the Experts thing in there and kind of build this little community for the AEC community, and, so hopefully that's going to start hitting it. Nobody really knows about it yet until hopefully people will hear it from this. But so in that, I've got, you can ask Nick Sonder, Dwayne Addy, Daniel Tall, Mike Brightman, and then the Zachary engineering guys. So you get engineers, architects, landscape architects, construction guys, document guy, and builders. So you get a little bit of everything in there. And so there's a Q&A where you can go in and ask those guys directly. And so not, they just get an email notification that, hey, Joe Blow asked you a question. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's going to be cool. As with everything I do, though, it doesn't do any good if people don't know what's out there. And that's been part of the frustration. So a lot of stuff out there, a lot of ideas, but just trying to get the word out. But those guys were gracious to offer to say, yeah, this would be fun. And I've got to meet all those guys at base camp. I mean, just all you guys in the community it is just a, people still go on that base camp app. Have you seen that?
It's amazing.
But no, it's a pretty tight community. I think it's really cool.
It's amazing. And that just sounds like an incredible resource for everybody I know. So we do host a lot of videos. We like the Nick Sonder video you mentioned, which I think is like 4 years old now.
Yeah.
Is actually on our YouTube channel. And I still see comments going up, people asking, "Hey, Nick, how do I go about this or this?" The downside is that I don't think Nick double checks that video on a regular basis to see if anybody has asked a question.
That's hard.
It is. It's rough. But I like the idea that you have that channel for people, SketchUp users who want to, well, like you said, ask the expert, can actually get on there and find answers to questions they have from people who are actually doing it right now.
Yeah, no doubt. And I will say that, I was worried that I'm putting pressure on these guys and they're already busy in their businesses and stuff like that, hoping that they'll answer a question if it gets asked. So if anybody does not get a response from one of those guys, email me directly and I'll make sure you do.
John will be the heavy. He'll get stuff done.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Those guys are all, they're top-notch guys. So it'll be fun.
All right, John. So we're kind of at the point where we'll start wrapping up. Do you have any last thoughts about SketchUp, construction, building? What's on your mind that we haven't touched on?
I think I've pretty much gone on and on about everything I do. I still think that it's, we all wish it would do this and wish it would do that. The release came out for 2019 and I read through it going, oh, what's going to be in there? Of course, honestly, I wonder, are they going to put me out of business with Estimator and things like that? You think about those things, but there's more I wish it would do. There's more that, and I know now I can do it. I can, the problem is things that I think are cool, maybe not other people. And that's another thing I learned about this whole accelerator thing is that, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should.
Sure.
And I've got so many other ideas that I want to do to make this complete selections process and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is there people there to do it or to pay for it? So we're still in that lag, but more people are getting used to, more builders are using systems like Co-Construct and Builder Trend and things like that I was, doing 10 years ago. And it's becoming a lot more standard now with cloud storage and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff coming with augmented reality and virtual reality. We didn't touch on that, but like Inkscape. I mean, I'm using Inkscape every day for the VR bit because it's so realistic looking. And, and I'm like that 6-story building that I'm doing now in Canada. I did all the renderings for the penthouse units that they're going to be there. They needed the marketing first. So unfortunately I was putting the cart before the horse and having to get the finishes done before I was completely done building the thing. But, I did everything before in Lumion. I still use Lumion for all my animations and everything, but I was just shocked at how well Inkscape is doing now with the renderings. I mean, these were high grade professional renderings done in SketchUp and Inkscape. So it's just getting better and better. And the fact that you guys work with all these other programs, there's always this problem of chimneys in this industry where there's all this vertical stuff going on and no horizontal integration anywhere. Right. And you guys, by allowing third-party people to do extensions and so forth, I think there's a lot of cool stuff to come. I really hope to be a part of it, but I just want it to be there. I want it to be mainstream. I mean, I've got guys now that have SketchUp Viewer on their phone and, they're viewing these models. I've got project managers that work for these builders that I'm working for, and I'm sending them the file, and they are actually doing it themselves now. And they've got estimators. So they're out in the field. They're going, okay, I need, instead of sitting there measuring everything for footings and foundations and stuff, they're just clicking on it, and getting a ton of information. And also with having these things modeled and having this kind of information keeps everybody tighter. Sure. You're getting exact information. I get a bill from my concrete guy that says, yeah, it's 2,000 square feet. I'm like, no, it's 1,893 or whatever. It's keeping everybody sharp, but you imagine that multiplying that across the whole project. Not only are you saving money, you're saving your clients money, everything's more efficient. So I think that's where it's all heading. I'd like to see a lot more of the whole BIM discussion. I'd love to have heard what you were talking about for the show you did before, but I think that's where it's all heading. I'm excited to see what happens with it. I think SketchUp's going to be a huge part of it. We've all said, and Dwayne and I've talked about how SketchUp, people consider it like a toy. When I first started using it, it was to do like soft plan. I couldn't do a complicated ceiling. It would take 3 days to try to figure out how to make it parametrically, where I could model it in SketchUp in 5 minutes and then import it in. So it used to be a sort of a toy that, and now I think it's become so much more powerful. I think a lot of architects they still model with it. They still do conceptual with SketchUp, and then maybe they move to Revit. I'd like to see it where they didn't have to,
Hey, it sounds like a good plan. I'm on board.
Yeah, man.
All right. Well, thank you very much, John. I really appreciate your time and
thank you.
A lot of good information.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Thanks for having me, Aaron. I really appreciate it. You guys are all top notch. Have to come visit you again at the mothership.
Oh, we'll have you anytime. All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Hi again, guys. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Framer for SketchUp. Now, you just heard John Brock talk about it, and wow, do I have some other stuff to talk about it about. From the same people who brought you Estimator for SketchUp is the new Framer for SketchUp. Now, look, you got parametric framing of all the walls in your design, and we're talking, they have information for bottom plates. We're talking top plates, okay? We got your right wall board, very important when you're building walls. You've got your end offset, of course, and your start offset for that matter. Spacing, height, roof slope, it's all on there, guys. Everything you need to do parametric framing of all the walls in your design, and it's very simple, let me tell you, with Framer for SketchUp. Framer for SketchUp, get it.
All right, so the next thing we're going to look at is our community spotlight. Let's see, what was it? It was last week, not too long ago. I forget, podcast time it's forever. There is no yesterday or tomorrow in the realm of podcast. Mm-hmm. But not long ago, we started a new streaming channel. We started actually doing content on Twitch. and we did some live streaming. And we got to give a shout out to one of the people on Twitch. His username is, I'm going to say Percy Please. It's PERCYPL3Z. So I think that's Percy Please. You buy that?
Percy Plez?
Plez? I'm going to call him Percy for short. We'll put a link to his channel on Twitch, wherever you get this podcast. And it's worth checking out because not only did Percy use SketchUp to design a house he's building, but he's actually live streaming the entire process of building it. Mm-hmm. So he has, you guys got to check it out just because it's, I mean, I was thinking of the work that you and I went through, Matt, to get set up and stream me sitting in this nice controlled environment. We're in this room. It's nice. It's
climate controlled.
We got some
nice
sound,
microphones and everything. Yeah.
And we spent hours setting up. Well, maybe not hours, but we spent some time setting up and controlling that. You were here to help me. That was nice too.
Always.
Percy is out in the field with his phone, setting up and recording as he builds every piece of this house. And I just got to say, I mean, you guys, if you have any interest in or curiosity about construction or how this would go together, and I don't know where he's at either, but it looks cold.
Yeah, it does.
He's always got a hat and gloves on.
Yeah.
And half of his videos are him at night too. And you can see his breath. And I mean, hats off to the man for making some one-of-a-kind content, because it is... it looks like a lot. I mean, it looks... I admit, I admire anybody who can go build a house anyhow, but live streaming the process, that's some next level stuff. So we'll link to Percy's page in the description, but check him out, subscribe to him, see some of his live stuff, ask some questions, tell him he's doing a good job. I know he'd appreciate that. So that's our community spotlight.
Nice.
SketchUp members.
And for people who don't know what Twitch is, I mean, it's like a lot of people don't know exactly what it is, or have heard that it's like video games or something like that. But we've recently started putting live streams on there, and it's mainly just Aaron live modeling and interacting with people and stuff like that. And I mean, the whole platform is really just a platform made out of only live streaming. Like you can see, live stuff on YouTube and stuff like that, but it's only live. So it's really good for interacting with your audience and with people, checking out stuff that's happening right now, and they can ask questions. And so it's a really cool platform, and we're trying to get our own Twitch channel started. So a little plug for that, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But check out our streams on there, of course. So
yeah, it's good stuff. And it's, those of you who've been following us would know that we've been toying with this live thing. So we did some Facebook live stuff, tried that out. We did a thing or two on YouTube live. And we're just kind of trying to figure out what the best platform is. Right now, I got to say that our Twitch stream has been probably the most interactive. It was also the longest. And
technical wise, it's so much easier and better.
It was definitely the most high fidelity stream we've ever done.
No, it's way easier on our end. And hopefully easy for people to watch without like lagging and stuff like that too. So
yeah. So if you've seen us on Facebook and we're less
glitchy
than impressed with the quality of what came out, hopefully give us another chance and check us out on our new platform. So, well, that pretty much wraps up our SketchUp talk about construction, residential construction. We would love to hear what you, the listener, have to say about what we talked about. You want to call us out something, you want to supply some more information, whatever you want to do. If you head to www.sketchup.com/construction talk, you can actually hop onto our forum thread there and leave a message, chime in, or just say hi. We'd love to hear what you think. That's also, our forum is a great spot for you to let us know if there's a topic you would like to hear us talk about here on SketchUp Talk. But until next time, that's everything we got. So thank you for swinging by and taking a listen to us, and I hope you have a great time.
Certainly.
Thank you.
This has been a Trimble Media production. You've been listening to SketchUp Talk, the show for folks who just can't get enough SketchUp. If you like what you hear, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. If you have an idea for an episode or know someone who'd make a great guest, drop us a line at podcast@sketchup.com. And if you'd like to learn more about SketchUp or take it for a test drive, visit sketchup.com.